Hello my loves, welcome back to the channel. My name is Chioma. If you are a newbie on here, you're highly welcome. But to all of you, my old-time friends, you are so welcome in here. As a matter of fact, I have good news to share with you. You would have already seen it, but it means so much to me that we are now at 1,000 subscribers in this space. Oh my goodness, I still can't believe it. But I just want to say a heartfelt thank you for all of your support and your encouragement since I started this journey a year ago. Thank you so much for 1,000 subscribers. Now, this is the road to 10,000. I am sure that we can make it happen. Another thing that I also want to quickly get out of the way would be the quality of my voice. I'm so sorry that my voice is not the best right now. I actually caught the flu and I am recovering, but the voice is not there yet. And so in this video, I might be taking a lot of water breaks just to keep things going smoothly. Okay, so pardon me if I am taking too many breaks in this video, but I am sure you understand. Well, we're now in the second video in the series that I started in my previous video. I titled it the Job Series. And in the first video that I made, which was my previous video, I started off by talking about some of the big employers of social workers here in Australia, some of the places where you can find your first entry-level job as a social worker. And I also went on to talk about pre-entry level social work jobs. So if you haven't already seen that video, not to worry, you can finish off with this one and then go back and watch that one. There's going to be a link in the description, okay? So in today's video, we're going on to talk about the application process. This is going to cover preparing your CV, preparing your cover letter, and also the selection criteria. Are you ready? Because I am. Get your notebook and your pen and let's get to business. There's actually a lot to cover, okay? So let's start off with your CV. How do you write an Australian style CV? First of all, I want you to know that there are some key elements that must be included in your CV when it comes to writing it in Australian style. Am I sounding too croaky? Should I continue? Those elements are usually broken up into sections when you look at an Australian style CV. By the way, this is what it looks like. So as you can see, there's a section for your contact details, which would include your name, your email address, your contact phone number, and also your residential address or your postal address, okay? So that's it for the contact section. The next would be a professional statement. Some people might call it a professional summary. There's so many ways that you can title that part of your CV, but the whole idea behind including that section in your CV is to give a very brief summary of your professional experience and your skills, okay? All right, so let me just give you a very basic example of what your professional summary might read like. So you might want to say completed an MSW following X months or X years of experience working with clients in homelessness, childcare, drugs and alcohol. You can fill in the other blanks, okay? And applying strong advocacy, communication, and trauma-informed skills to achieve client-centered outcomes. And that's all you need to put on there. Now, I want you to think closely about the experience you had during your placement. So it might be the case that you don't have any volunteering experience, you don't have any pre-knowledge of anything in social work practice apart from what you did during your placement while you were still studying. So think about some of those transferable skills that you gained during your placements and which you can transfer into the new role. So you want to talk about that in your professional statement as well. The rule of thumb here is to keep it short, straight to the point, and concise. 4 lines maximum, okay? I would have said 5 lines, which would still be okay, but please keep it to 4 lines if you can. So that was a very basic example. I am sure you can do better than me, but I just put that out there so that it gets you thinking about some of the things you might want to say in your professional summary. So another section that will be included in your CV would be your skills. So sometimes I have gone the way of listing my skills in bullet points, and in which case I would keep them to about 5 or 6 skills in total, because the idea is to not make your CV too long. For you who is just starting out, you want to aim for 2 pages. 2 pages is the optimal length. You either put it in bullet points where you just write, you just list out the skills, like maybe communication, advocacy, some of those skills, right? I have made a video of 11 skills that you would need as a social worker. So maybe see that video. It will give you ideas on what kind of skills you might want to include in your CV, okay? Or you could go the other way of listing out your skills as strengths. I would go into a little detail explaining each skill, but I try to keep it to maximum 2 lines of text. Not more than 2 lines. If I can keep it within 1 line, that's fine. So if you're talking about communication, for instance, you might want to say you have demonstrated communication skills by keeping accurate records, okay, or by holding face-to-face sessions with clients. So that way, you're not just talking about you having the skill of communication, but you're actually demonstrating instances where you have used that skill. Water break, sorry. Okay, so we move on from that to talk about qualifications. That would be another section of your CV. So under qualifications, you want to list it in chronological order, starting with your most recent qualification, which in this case, I assume would be your Master of Social Work or your Bachelor of Social Work, right? And then there's going to be another section for your work history or experience. I guess a lot of us would be familiar with this one, right? You would go into details talking about both your responsibilities, but most importantly, your achievements, your outcomes. You really want to highlight that. So when you talk about your responsibilities, I want you to talk about them from the perspective of what you achieved. Using numbers is one very strong way to communicate outcomes. So instead of just saying, I supported women and children, you might want to say, I supported 4 women to move into long-term housing following an experience of domestic violence. Using past tense, using numbers, and then highlighting your achievements or outcomes are the best way to go when you're talking about your past experience. Another rule of thumb here is to keep it relevant to the role you're applying for. Anything you did in your previous jobs that you do not think would make any sense or would be understood in light of the job you're applying for, please do not put it in your CV. Leave it out of your CV. It doesn't matter where you worked, just leave it out of your CV. And going by that, you might have tons of experience and might be asking yourself, do I put that experience? Do I put that work that I did 10 years ago on there? I would advise you to keep your CV as current as possible. So start with your most recent work experience that is relevant to the role you're applying to. You do not necessarily have to include details of every single job you have done in the past. The key question to ask yourself is it relevant to this role? And if it is not relevant to that role, leave it. Now, it's possible that you might have worked in a place that was not anything related to the human services generally, but maybe there are skills you picked up from that job that you think would be relevant to the role you're applying for. In that case, I would say include those skills. You do not necessarily have to talk about all the other roles you performed in that job, but you just want to highlight the parts that you think are relevant to the job you're applying for. I hope that makes sense. Another thing here is for you to use industry-related terminology. As a social worker, you're probably going to be hearing words like client-centered approach, strengths-based perspective, trauma-informed practice. Those are all social work-related terminology. So use those sorts of terminology in your CV because it would demonstrate your confidence. It would also demonstrate your knowledge and your experience. So you want to use that. And talking about keywords, one tip that I also want to share with you here is the job advert itself. Read everything about the job advert. Take note of the language that is used. Take note of some of those keywords from the job adverts and then replicate that in your CV. Drop enough of those keywords in your CV. Use them generously. Your CV, your cover letter, even your selection criteria. You might already know this, but I'm going to repeat it anyways. Always tailor your CV to the role. And I guess it's kind of related to some of the things I have talked about regarding not putting anything on there that is not relevant. Now, when it comes to writing hobbies and other interests that you might have, some people would encourage that you put your hobbies on your CV. Personally, I don't, except if those hobbies are things, again, that are related to the role. I don't think it makes any sense that you're applying for a role as an intake worker, and from everything you've read about that role, you're going to be working in an office, you're going to have a caseload, you're going to be creating case plans, and then in your CV you're writing that you have a hobby for traveling. Like, how does that relate to being an intake worker? If you've got any professional certifications, any relevant training, professional development you've done in the past that is relevant to the role, by all means, include all of that. Then moving on from there, there's going to be the references section. So generally speaking, you're not expected to provide your references on your CV. A generic statement saying that you're ready to provide those references on request should be enough. So those are the key sections on an Australian style CV. It's not important for you to include your age. It's not important for you to include your gender. Okay, so having talked about writing your CV and all the things you should consider when you write your CV, I just wanted to ask, feel free to leave your answers in the comment section. What part in the job application process do you struggle the most with? Is it writing your CV or your cover letter or addressing the selection criteria? Let me know in the comment section and let's continue. All right, so now let's talk about your cover letter. Your cover letter is a great opportunity for you to showcase yourself. So you want to keep it 1 page long or a page and a half. I like to write my cover letters in conversational style or in narrative style. So this is where I just feel like I'm telling a story about myself. And even though it's in conversational style, it doesn't mean you're going to be using jargon or using informal language. You still want to keep it formal, but you want it to read as a relaxed story about yourself. When whoever is going to read that cover letter actually sees the cover letter, they feel like you're sitting in front of them talking to them. That's what I keep in mind when I write my cover letters. So think about when you're asked to talk about yourself in an interview. You know, when they say, tell me something about yourself, think about the pitch you give when you're asked that question. I want you to keep that in mind when you're writing your cover letter. So you want to include a bit about yourself, professionally, of course. This is not where you go saying you're married and you have 4 kids, okay? You keep it professional when you talk about yourself. And then you want to talk about some specific skills you have and which you're bringing into the role. Talk about how you've used that skill in the past and the outcomes you achieved using those skills. In some cases, it might be your cover letter that they get to see first. Your cover letter should then increase their interest to want to go on and read your CV. So talk also about what motivated you to apply for the role and what you hope to achieve in the role. So if there are any strategic goals that have been expressed in the job advert, keep that in mind when you write your cover letter and you want to talk about how you're going to contribute to achieving that goal. Okay? So having said all of that, let's look at an example of a cover letter that I just put together. Again, this is very basic. Dear XX, if you know the hiring manager's name, you should put their names. Like, always address people by their names if you know their names. But if you don't, it's okay to write Dear Recruiting Manager or Dear Hiring Manager. It is my pleasure to apply for the role XXX. I started my career in social work by volunteering in the areas of XXX, where I did XX and employed XX skills to achieve XX outcomes. I have recently completed an MSW as part of furthering my interest in your passion, and you talk about what your passion is. As part of my placements, I worked in dash areas where I contributed to delivering XX for XX type clients. This role offers me the opportunity to apply this and that skills as an integral part of my career interest, which is aligned with your organization's goal to achieve XX. I hope that makes sense, okay? So fill out the blanks, switch out the x-axis with what's important and the things that you want to showcase in your own experience and your knowledge. All right? So that's it for the cover letter. Let's go into your selection criteria. So I am just going to give a few general tips around how to address your selection criteria, but I did find this very helpful resource online, which I am going to leave a link in the description box for you to check out. So this online resource actually gives perfect examples of the sorts of questions that you would likely get in your selection criteria and how to address them. It's very detailed, guys, so please, I want you to check out that link in the description box, and I'm going to label it so that you know exactly what it is when you go into the description box. But generally speaking, the selection criteria will be specific questions or questions that will ask you to explain specific skill sets that you have and demonstrate with lots of examples how you have used those skills. Keyword, examples, okay? And I didn't talk about this when I talked about the CV, but when I said you should highlight your achievements more than your responsibilities, one great way to do it is to give examples. Do not shy away from that, because that is actually what they want to see. It's going to be a lot of questions asking you to demonstrate what you've done in specific scenarios. So mention the skills you have applied, give ample examples, I've already said that. Mention responsibilities, but most importantly, outcomes in terms of meeting deadlines, achieving KPIs. KPIs are key performance indicators. Recognition awards, any recognition award you've had in the past, commendations you've got from your managers. You also want to kind of weave that into whatever you write, and any promotions that you've received. Maybe as a result of the good work you've done in the past, you've been promoted to taking on, higher responsibilities and all of that. You want to put that, even if not in your selection criteria. These are some of the things that you should also consider including in your cover letter, okay? Now, having said all of that, guys, if you haven't already subscribed and this video made sense to you, would you consider subscribing now? Please do. It is deeply appreciated. Before you leave, don't forget to give this video a thumbs up. And it would be great if you can also share this video to anyone who you know in your life who needs this kind of information. I'll see you again in my next video, guys, which will be the third video in the series. And in that video, we're going to be talking about your interview. Stay tuned for that, and I'll see you again soon. Bye-bye.